On a dim street corner in Manila, under a flickering lamp and a sky that had forgotten the stars, a young singer named Evan performed every night. Not for fame, not for applause, but to buy medicine for his sick mother waiting in a small room behind the marketplace. Most people passed him by without a glance. But Evan kept singing, believing that one day, his voice might reach someone who truly listened. The night air in Manila was thick with humidity, blending the smell of street food, diesel fumes, and rain that never quite fell. Beneath the tired street lamp, where shadows stretched longer than dreams, Evan tuned his battered guitar, its surface chipped, strings uneven, but still capable of holding every ounce of his hope. He took a deep breath, not because he expected a crowd, but because music was the only thing that made him feel alive. That as he strummed the opening chords, people streamed past like rushing water, students laughing, workers heading home, mothers dragging sleepy children, tourists bargaining with vendors. Evan's voice rose softly, weaving through the noise, carrying the emotions he never spoke aloud. He didn't sing to impress. He didn't sing to be famous. He sang because every peso he earned meant another vial of medicine for his mother. Another day she could fight. A group of teenagers stopped nearby, not to listen, but to take selfies. They shouted, posed, laughed, then disappeared. Evan's eyes followed them briefly, then returned to his guitar. He'd learned long ago not to take it personally. People weren't cruel, they were just busy living their own battles. Minutes passed. The small tin mug at his feet remained nearly empty, but still he smiled, as if each note was a reason to be grateful. A vendor from across the street waved and placed a bottle of water next to him. "Keep singing, Iko," she said. "One day, someone important will hear you." Evan nodded, though part of him wondered if she said it more for his sake than her own. His fingers shook from tiredness, yet he pushed forward, shifting into a more emotional song, the kind that came from a place of loss, prayer, and longing. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from honesty, and for a brief moment, a few people slowed their steps. A man paused, listened, then walked away. A mother closed her eyes to savor a lyric before her child pulled her onward. Tiny moments, flickers of connection, but no one stayed. Just when his hope began to fade, a tiny hand tugged at his shirt. Evan looked down to see a little girl wearing a school uniform 2 sizes too big. She stared at him, wide-eyed, like she saw something others didn't. "Why do you still sing if nobody watches?" She asked up the question pierced deeper than any silence ever had. Evan knelt carefully, setting his guitar aside. He didn't want her to think failure was something to be afraid of. He smiled, gently brushing dust from her cheek. "Because sometimes miracles come when no one is looking," he said. The girl blinked, absorbing his words the way only children can, with pure belief. She wrapped her arms around him, a hug so unexpected and sincere that Evan's eyes stung. When she left, everything around him was the same. The crowds, the noise, the indifference, but something inside him felt different. He picked up his guitar again. And this time, he didn't sing for money. He sang because somewhere in the universe, maybe destiny had just listened. The next evening arrived with unexpected coldness, the kind that made the concrete feel unforgiving and the city lights look harsher than usual. Evan sat on his usual spot beneath the tired street lamp, clutching his guitar for warmth as much as for comfort. He thought about staying home, about resting for once, but the empty bottle of medicine on his mother's bedside table kept replaying in his mind like an echo. So he came back, and he played. Tonight, his voice was softer, almost afraid to take up space. The song he chose was Breakeven, a melody that fit his life a little too perfectly. The chords trembled as he sang about heartbreak, about fighting for something that keeps slipping away, about people leaving while you're still holding on. Every lyric reflected a piece of his reality, the constant struggle, the loneliness, the fear of losing the person he loved most. People walked by, as always. A few teenagers tossed coins as if throwing scraps. A couple argued loudly nearby, their voices drowning out the most emotional parts of the song. A bus roared by, blowing dust into his face. But Evan didn't stop. He closed his eyes, and his voice began to rise, not in volume, but in depth. The kind that comes when someone is singing from their scars rather than their lips. Then, suddenly, the noise around him seemed to pause. There, across the street, stood a foreign man, tall, sharp-eyed, arms crossed, watching Evan with an intensity that felt impossible to ignore. He wasn't recording on a phone, he wasn't laughing, he wasn't even smiling. He was simply listening, and that alone felt unreal. Evan tried to act as if he didn't notice, but his hands shook. His voice almost gave out. For a split second, fear consumed him. What if this man was judging him? What if he walked away like everyone else? But then he remembered the little girl's words, and his own reply. Sometimes miracles come when no one is looking. So he began the second verse with everything he had left, with the pain of every rejected job application, every sleepless night, every time he lied to his mother, saying he had eaten when he hadn't. The street was no longer just a sidewalk. It was a lifetime of dreams compressed into one performance. When the final note faded, the applause didn't come. The world stayed quiet. Cars moved. Vendors shouted. Life resumed, but the foreign man didn't walk away. He crossed the street slowly, almost cautiously, like he was approaching something fragile. Evan held his breath. Have you ever performed on a real stage? The man asked. Evan let out a soft laugh. The kind that hides pain, sir. This sidewalk is the only stage life gave me. The man didn't smile. He didn't pity him. Instead, he reached into his pocket and handed Evan a card. Sleek, official, intimidating. Evan stared at it. His hands trembled. America's Got Talent audition. His heart thundered. The crowd didn't notice. The city didn't cheer. Nothing around him changed, yet his entire world did. The stranger leaned closer and said quietly, "Your voice shouldn't live on a street corner." For the first time in a long time, Evan let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he was meant for something more. The audition card trembled between Evan's fingers all night. He held it while cooking rice, while wiping his mother's forehead, even while pretending to sleep. He kept staring at the bold letters, America's Got Talent, audition, as if it were a mirage that might disappear if he blinked too long. By dawn, he had made his decision. He kissed his mother's hand gently and whispered, "Ma, I have to try." She didn't understand at first, until she saw the card. Tears filled her eyes, not from joy, but fear. "Anak, we don't have money for this dream," she said softly. Evan smiled, and for the first time in a long time, his smile wasn't forced. Dreams don't come when we're ready. They come when we need them most. The next week was a blur of sacrifices. Evan sold his old guitar, his most precious possession, to afford plane fare. He pawned his shoes and traveled in borrowed sneakers. His cousins scraped together enough coins for a passport photo. A vendor gifted him a suitcase. The same woman who always left him water at night tucked in a pack of biscuits for the journey. He left Manila with nothing except faith borrowed from the people who believed in him more than he believed in himself. The airport was overwhelming, full of voices and screens and people rushing everywhere. Evan didn't know where to look or where to sit. He slept on cold chairs, using his backpack as a pillow. His meals were biscuits, sometimes just water or nothing at all. But the thought of walking onto that stage kept him going. When he finally arrived in Los Angeles, the world felt enormous. Buildings bigger than mountains, cars faster than taxis back home, and people who never looked tired. Evan felt small, embarrassingly small. At the AGT venue, contestants around him wore glamorous outfits, carried designer bags, and practiced with expensive earbuds. Evan sat quietly in a corner, holding his borrowed clothes in a plastic bag. He overheard whispers, "Who's he? Where is he from? He looks lost." They weren't wrong. He was lost. Lost, but hopeful. A production assistant approached him. "Sir, you're up soon. Can we have your story for the cameras?" Evan swallowed hard. "My story is simple. I sing for my mother." When his turn finally came, he stepped onto the AGT stage with trembling hands. The lights were blinding. The audience loomed like a giant wave, and there sitting in the center was Simon Cowell, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Evan felt his knees weaken. He wondered if he had made a mistake. Maybe he didn't belong here. Maybe he should have gone home. Back to the street corner where expectations were low and disappointment was familiar. But then he remembered. The little girl's hug. The vendor's water. His mother's tired smile. Every person who gave him hope when they had nothing to gain. He lifted the mic. My name is Evan. And tonight I'll be singing Breakeven. A long silence followed, and then the music began. In that moment, fear vanished. He wasn't standing in front of judges or millions of viewers. He was standing on a sidewalk again, under a flickering lamp, playing for the only reason that ever mattered. Love. The first note of Breakeven echoed through the massive hall like a fragile whisper fighting to be heard. Evan's hands trembled as he gripped the microphone, but the moment he opened his mouth, something inside him shifted. The fear didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling him. His voice started soft, hesitant, as if testing whether it deserved to exist in such a grand space. The audience listened politely, not yet invested. The judges took notes. Simon Cowell remained motionless. But then the memories rushed in. The nights singing under the street lamp. The empty medicine bottle, the little girl's arms wrapped around him, the stranger who believed, the mother who waited for miracles. Suddenly, Evan wasn't just performing. He was releasing every emotion he had swallowed for years, poured into the song. Pain, love, desperation, hope. His voice soared, cracked, healed, and cracked again, not because he lacked skill, but because the truth rarely comes out clean. People in the audience stopped breathing. A woman in the front row clutched her chest. The camera operators leaned forward. Crew members abandoned their tasks just to watch by the second chorus. Evan's voice shook the theater, not with power, but with honesty. The kind of honesty that exposes the parts of life people try to hide. The broken dreams. The sacrifices no one sees. The heartbreak of loving someone who might not survive. The lights softened, illuminating him like a single beam of hope in darkness. He hit the high note, the hardest one, with tears already falling down his face. It wasn't perfect. It was raw, cracked, and real. And somehow, that made it perfect. The audience was on its feet before the final lyric even finished. But Evan didn't notice the applause at first. He didn't see the cheering. He didn't see the standing ovation. He didn't even see the tears on several judges' faces. Because he was too busy crying quietly, almost silently, a lifetime of emotion breaking open. Then something startling happened. While everyone else clapped, Simon Cowell remained still. No applause, no smile, no reaction. Just a long, unreadable stare. Evan's heart sank. He failed. He thought he failed the one person who mattered most in this dream. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Simon leaned forward, eyes glistening, and spoke, voice trembling more than anyone expected. You weren't singing to impress us, he said slowly. You were singing to survive. The crowd hushed, waiting. Simon stood, and without another word, slammed the golden buzzer. A thunder of gold confetti exploded from the ceiling. The arena erupted in cheers. Judges stood, audience shouted. Evan collapsed to his knees, hands covering his face, overwhelmed by a dream too big to understand. Cameras zoomed in as he whispered between sobs, "Mama, we made it, we finally made it." And in that single moment, the world finally saw what the street lamp had seen for years, a star who never needed permission to shine. The confetti had barely settled when Evan rushed backstage, shaking, overwhelmed, clutching the golden buzzer plaque like it was a lifeline to a future he never dared to imagine. He didn't care about the cameras or interviews. There was only one thing he needed to call home. With trembling hands, he dialed his mother. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Evan. Anok. Are you okay?" Her voice sounded weak but warm, the kind of warmth that survives even through pain. "Mama," he whispered, wiping tears with the back of his hand. "I did it. They loved the song. I got the golden buzzer." Silence. Then the softest sound came through, not surprise, not confusion, but a sob of relief. A mother's heart, finally given permission to stop worrying. "Come home soon," she said. "Not because we need the money, but because I just want to hug my son." Those words stayed with him through every rehearsal, every interview, every headline. People loved him now, praised him, stopped him on sidewalks for selfies. Yet the spotlight didn't change him. It only reminded him of who he had always been. Months later, on a GT finals night, the studio buzzed with excitement. Huge screens, roaring fans, flashing lights. Everything was amplified. But Evan stood backstage with closed eyes, breathing slowly, grounding himself the same way he did on Manila sidewalks. Just before he walked out to perform, a producer stopped him. "Evan, there's someone here to see you." He turned and froze. A little girl in a school uniform, 2 sizes too big, stood there. The same one who hugged him under the street lamp, the one who asked why he kept singing when no one watched. Only now, she held a handmade sign, "Keep singing queer." Instantly, Evan sank to his knees and hugged her. Cameras captured it, not for drama, but because it was real, pure, and unplanned. A producer leaned down and whispered, "We flew her here. She told us you were her hero first." When Evan stepped on the finals stage, he wasn't nervous. He wasn't lost. He didn't feel small anymore. He wasn't singing to survive. He was singing because he finally believed he was worth hearing. His mother watched live from the hospital, healthier now, recovering well, surrounded by nurses and neighbors who cheered like family. The little girl stood front row, hand over her heart. The judges watched with admiration, not judgment. And when Evan finished, the applause didn't matter. The votes didn't matter. The trophy didn't matter. What mattered was the journey. Every act of kindness that kept him going when the world didn't care. Every person who gave hope when they had nothing to gain. After the show, Evan told a reporter, "People think I got here because of talent, but I didn't. I got here because of kindness. Kindness is the real golden buzzer." Final heartfelt closing. Evan never returned to the street corner to survive. He returned to sing for love. And every night he performs, he makes sure to remind the world that even in the darkest moments, someone is listening, someone cares, and miracles come when we don't expect them.